friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and I'm so excited. The month of August is almost here. And if you're new to my channel, August is special here because that's when we do our preservation challenge. It's called the Every Bit Counts Challenge, and we've been doing it, I think on YouTube this might be our 5th year, but for much longer on Instagram. And it's just a fun challenge, a way to set goals for ourselves to preserve something every day of the month, no matter how small. Anything, whether it's freezing, dehydrating, freeze drying, canning, lacto fermenting, even grabbing a bunch of herbs out of the garden and just getting them hanging upside down in the house somewhere to dry. That counts as well. All of it counts towards building a wonderfully stocked pantry to help us through the winter when all of this amazing food isn't growing out in the garden. So I went ahead and got started a week early just because the garden's beginning to produce and I had an opportunity to purchase some bulk blueberries. And so I just needed to get busy canning and I decided to document it. So in this week's video, I'm going to bring you 7 food preservation projects, one for every day of the week over the last week. And then that's going to be my content through the month of August. So let's go ahead and show you the preservation projects that I did this week, and then if you stay tuned to the end of the video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how you can participate in the challenge this year.
I started out the week by picking up 120 pounds of blueberries. I have a friend who gets these every year for me from the local Amish, and it's such a blessing. I have tried multiple times to plant blueberry bushes on our property, and I've tried amending the soil in multiple different ways, and they never last more than a couple years here, so I'm doing something wrong. And in the meantime, I'm really grateful to have access to these amazing blueberries. So my children ate approximately 25 to 30 pounds of these fresh within a week. But the rest of them we preserved in various ways. I never buy blueberries any other time of the year except for this. So this is what will last us through all of the year in all of our baking and things. And the way that I do that is by freezing them. Thankfully, blueberries do not need to be flash frozen. I can just wash them really well, get the excess water off of them, and then I portion them out into these old lunch meat containers and put them directly into the freezer. Like I said, they don't need to be flash frozen because they're really hard, round circles. They just kind of break apart really easily when I want to bake muffins and things with them. And that's primarily what we use these for. My goal is to be able to use one of these containers of frozen berries every other week throughout the entire year to make muffins and some certain baked goods, as well as to have them in fruit smoothies and things. And so this was my first batch that I got frozen. This is approximately 50 pounds of the berries, and I went through and did about another 20 pounds frozen, and I just keep them in the freezer like this and then grab one every other week when we need them throughout the year. I also took some berries to make some blueberry pie filling. So I started with 4.5 cups of sugar. I used 2 cups of arrowroot powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, and then I added 9.5 cups of water, as well as about 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. And then we're going to mix that around and get it heated up on the stove. We want to get it nice and thick to be our pie goop, just like we did in last week's video for the peaches, except this time we're going to do it with blueberries. And because blueberries are rather juicy, and as they heat in the canning process, they release extra juice, that's why we added a little extra arrowroot powder compared to with the peaches. So we did use 2 full cups of the arrowroot powder. Once my goop is all thickened up, I pour the berries that I measured out. I wanted to do 7 quarts of berries because 7 quarts of pie filling is what I fit in my canner load at a time. We got it all mixed around, and then we're refilling our jars with the berry and pie goop mixture all together. Once we get all of our jars filled, we can debubble them, and then we're going to want to make sure that we really wipe the rims of our jars really well to make sure none of that sticky pie filling is on top, or that will affect the seals of our lids. And speaking of lids, as always, I'm going to use my 4 jars canning lids. They're my absolute favorite, and if you would like to get 10% off your canning lids, check out the link in the video description, and you can use my code 3rivers10 to get your 10% off. These give me the absolute best seal rate out of any lids I have ever used. We're going to get our rings on top of those jars and get them nice and tight and put them in the water bath canner. These quarts of pie filling are going to process for 25 minutes. And when we're done, we have wonderful shelf-stable pie filling. You can see that with the blueberry pie filling, it is kind of, you can still see the pie goop there. Believe me, as it sits there, it will turn bluer. And I'm going to show you, here is one of those jars all mixed up and put into our pie shells. We went ahead and made some pies this week to kind of show you what they look like. It makes the most delicious blueberry pie. So I use basically this same pie recipe, this pie filling recipe for my canning with just about every fruit. I just change the amount of arrowroot powder I'm using based on how juicy that fruit is. So something like apple pie filling, I might only need to use 1 or 1.5 cups of arrowroot powder, but something really juicy like the blueberries, I will use 2. Another way we use some pie filling this week is to make a version of rolls. Instead of cinnamon rolls, I like to spread out my pie filling and kind of roll it up, and it makes a really delicious, you can use this for a dessert or a breakfast treat. It's a great way to use up your extra pie filling. I literally cannot have enough pie filling in my pantry. I'm going to try to do it with every fruit this year. We've done it so far with peaches and blueberries. We'll make sure to do some pears and apples and anything else I can get my hands on to make fruit pie filling. Speaking of other fruits that we have on the homestead right now, blackberry season has just started. I haven't harvested enough to make pie filling yet, but I did harvest enough to do a small batch of jam. I typically only need 5 cups of berries to do a batch of jam with the pectin that I use. So let's talk a little bit about jam making. It's really hard to share jam making recipes online because the recipe is going to change depending on which pectin you choose to use. I have used low sugar pectins before. The most popular one is Pomona's pectin, and I love it. You can take a typical jam recipe and cut the sugar down to only 1 cup per batch if you're using Pomona's or the special low sugar jams. But if you are using regular like Sure Gel or a high sugar type of pectin, if you try to reduce the amount of sugar and still use that same pectin, your jelly or jam is not going to set. So it's hard for me to share these recipes here because it's going to be highly dependent on the type of pectin that you want to use. But there are many options available out there. And you know what? You don't even have to use pectin. If you just cook your fruit down long enough to let a lot of the moisture evaporate, it will get thick enough to not need to use pectin at all. And I know that's the way they used to do it before store-bought pectins were available for people. You can also use different sweeteners other than sugar if you want to use something like honey. Using one of the low sugar pectins will give you a great result. So I did 1 batch of blackberry jam this week, and then while the pan was already all gross and messy, I decided to go ahead and throw in some of the blueberries from that bulk batch that I had purchased that I showed you, and we're using the same process to make a small batch of blueberry jam as well. Jam is one of the easiest preservation projects or canning projects that you can start with. It is kind of finicky sometimes with the pectin to get it to set, but in terms of the amount of time that it only takes about 15 minutes from start to finish to get all of your stuff in the jars and in the water bath canner, and then it only takes 10 minutes in the water bath canner to process. So it's a really fast project to do, and as long as you follow the instructions that come with the pectin that you're using, it's going to set and it's going to be just fine. I wanted to show you that sometimes if your fruit floats a little bit in the liquid, even on your jam, that isn't a problem. Once you open your jar and mix it all together, it's going to be just fine. So that is a variation of normal right there if your jars look like that. Here is yet another canning project we did this week with some of the blueberries. This is the easiest way to process your blueberries if you don't want to rely on electricity in your freezer to freeze them. You fill your jars with the raw blueberries and then cover those blueberries with water, leaving an inch of headspace, and then you're going to process those in your water bath canner for 15 minutes. And when you're done, you have blueberry juice. And then you can use the solids, the blueberries here, to use for baking, and all other types of places that cooked berries would be good. And it's just a really easy project. It's a great way to preserve them. Just strain out the berries, use the juice, and then cook with the berries. We're not just preserving fruit this week. The garden is starting to churn out lots of delicious veggies. The summer garden is coming alive. We're starting to get peppers and tomatoes and, of course, cucumbers. We're reaching the end of the first planting of cucumbers, and I'm going to show you how we're doing another later. But sometimes I don't get out there to harvest all of the cucumbers before they get over mature and the seeds begin to form on the inside. And these cucumbers are not ideal for making pickles because they're super juicy and wet inside, and they kind of turn to mush if you turn them into pickles. So you could can them into relish if you wanted to, but something that's a lot easier and quicker is to juice those cucumbers. And then the solids, all of the seeds and skins and things, will turn into juice pulp that you can feed to your animals, like your chickens will absolutely love it. And then the juice that is left over can be poured into some kind of mold. I like to use my super cubes here to do 2 tablespoon ice cubes. And then you can freeze these, and they're just delicious to use in smoothies, or we like to just grab a couple of these ice cubes and put them in a glass of water. It will cool down the water, add a little bit of cucumber flavor. It's just really refreshing on a hot summer day. A lot of people I talked to said they like to add a little bit of mint to it or put these in their lemonade. It just gives a little extra nutrient boost, and it's just a really fun way to use up those cucumbers that are otherwise just kind of seedy and not perfect for pickle making. The great things about these super cubes, which I will link these in the video description for you, is that the ice cubes just pop right out. It's really simple, and then you can store them in some kind of plastic baggie like this, portion them out to have enough for a batch of whatever you're doing, and then just enjoy them as you would like. They're extremely refreshing. Make sure you try this with your cucumbers. Most of the peppers are not mature yet, but the banana peppers are ahead of everything else, and we're starting to get a little bit of okra maturing on our plants. And so I grabbed a couple garlic scapes from the refrigerator and chopped those up, and we are going to ferment some banana peppers and okra. So the garlic scapes here are just for flavoring. And then we're going to chop up our vegetables. I have lots of banana peppers that are pickled. I still have a lot left over from last year in storage. And this is a first for me. I've been enjoying lacto fermenting my pickles, my cucumbers this year. And so I thought I would try the banana peppers to see if we enjoy those as much as we enjoy the pickled peppers. And the benefit to fermenting them, besides the nutrition of the probiotic, is that the texture of the peppers holds up and is firmer. So we just need to make a brine, just like with our pickles. We want to have 2 tablespoons per 4 cups of brine, and maybe you'll be better than I am at not spilling it as you pour it into your jar. But we just want to make sure that we're covering all of the solid vegetables with the brine. And sometimes that can be a challenge with vegetables like this that are small and like to float. It's a whole lot easier with cucumbers that you can pack really tightly into your jar. So I'm just putting a layer of zucchini on the top to kind of push down all of those solids. If you had a cabbage leaf or something like that to put on the top, that would be really helpful too. And then we're going to use a small 1/4 pint jar to just push everything down, and that will prevent anything on the top from molding. I also want to remind you that I did put a bay leaf in here, and that will also help keep your vegetables crisp. The tannins in that leaf will help. So after 3 days of fermenting, you can see our brine got cloudy, and this is what it looks like. We're going to remove everything from the jar, strain out all of the solids, pour a little bit of the brine into a smaller jar here, and then I'll use that leftover fermented brine for other things throughout the week in our cooking. So the next preservation project this week is slightly different. It doesn't happen in the kitchen. It's happening outside in the garden. It is time to harvest our onions. You know that your onions are ready when the onion greens start to fall over. That is a sign that they need to be harvested. You want to wait until they've had a couple days without rain or watering, and that's the perfect time to go ahead and get them out of the ground. So our Patterson storage onions were ready. Our red onions were not quite ready yet. So I escaped to the garden to get some peace and quiet and harvest onions. And my little buddy here, Benjamin, found me within about 4 minutes of getting out here. And it was lovely to just spend some one-on-one time with him. Getting the onions out of these beds. I'm excited. That clears up 3 more beds in my garden for fall planting, and we'll put some fall greens and some carrots and things like that in these once we get them amended and ready for that. But in the meantime, we are pulling these onions. It wasn't my best onion year. We have a lot of onions. They aren't a great size, at least not these Patterson onions. The red onions that I see growing in these beds are rather large, and I'll show you here in a minute one of these that I pulled that is bigger than a softball. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I don't know why the red onions chose to show off this year, but my Patterson onions are just kind of mediocre, but that's okay. Some of those things you can't control. It's just dependent on the weather and the cloud cover and all sorts of other factors that determine how big your bulbs are going to get. But we did get a whole wheelbarrow full here of onions. I'm very excited for that. This is about the same amount that we planted last year, and they were able to get us through the entire year. We used up our last bag of onions this spring, right as I was planting these ones. So we need to get these curing. We're going to put them out on a screen like this, and they were out here for about a couple days in the sunshine until I was able to clear up where my garlic was in the cellar. You want them to cure so that the outer layers of those onions dry and help protect the onion from rot. And after they cure for about a week or so, we will be able to cut all of the greens off, or we could keep the greens on and braid them into lovely onion braids, but we'll probably cut those greens off and then store these in mesh bags to use throughout the rest of the year. So like I said, these sat outside for about 24 hours, and then I moved them down into the cellar, and I will show you in a future video how we're going to store those up. As I mentioned, now that the onions are out, we are starting to focus on the fall garden. There are some things we can still plant. I'm getting another planting of cucumbers in. We did more zucchini this week. And then bush beans up until the end of July. And then we'll start shifting our focus to cold weather crops like our greens and herbs and carrots and radishes and things like that. But how to know whether or not you can still plant something is to look at your seed packet. This has about 55 to 60 days to maturity, and it also takes 5 to 7 days to germinate. So if you add that together, you're at the most 67 days before you're going to harvest cucumbers. And as of the day that I planted these, we still had 81 days before our first frost in October. So that's plenty of time to get a harvest from these cucumber plants. You just need to look at your seed packets and determine when your first frost date is in your zone, and you can determine what you can still plant to grow more food here in this growing season.
Okay, friends, hopefully you enjoyed this week's peek into what we've been preserving here at Three Rivers Homestead. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, this is a challenge that will be happening all through the month of August. And if you would like to participate, it's really easy. Anytime you want to put out either short form or long form video content here on YouTube, use the hashtag EveryBitCountsChallenge. And if you click on that hashtag, you will find everybody who's been participating over the last 5 years. There's a whole library of food preservation video content for you to browse through to get ideas and recipes and tips and anything. We have built such a beautiful community here of food preservationists. I'm just so grateful for all of you. So make sure you check out and are following that hashtag. Now, Instagram works a little differently. They no longer allow you to follow hashtags there. So I created an account called Every Bit Counts Challenge, and you can follow that account. And anybody who tags that account in their content on Instagram, their stuff will show up there. It's sort of a place for all of it to be found in one spot. So make sure you check that out and follow it on Instagram. And I'm just really excited. It's always fun every year to see what everybody comes up with. I learn something every year as I follow others. So we'll just do a little bit. There's nothing too small. You don't have to have a massive homestead. You don't have to be growing all your own food. It could just be going to the farmer's market and purchasing a little bit extra. Or maybe you're at the grocery store and berries are on sale or something, and you want to put some away and share with everyone how you did that, maybe break down the cost on how that's cost effective for you, whatever kind of information you want to put out there. Use the hashtag or tag the account on Instagram and we can all learn from you. So that's about it for this week. I'll be back next week with more food preservation. Until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful week and let's get busy preserving. All right. Bye, friends.